Good evening, and welcome to Disciple, Lesson 20, The Hidden Messiah. This lesson takes a lot of scriptures from the Gospel of Mark, and there are lots of random things to talk about. Mark is considered to be the first gospel, not chronologically, because Matthew is the first one chronologically, but first in that it is most likely the oldest gospel. Most scholars agree that Mark was written first. The reason for that is because Mark is the shortest, and almost everything in Mark is found in the other Gospels. And so the scholars postulate that the later writers, Matthew, Luke, and John, had Mark and possibly some other sources with them when they wrote and compiled their gospel, their stories of the life of Jesus. So Mark, the simplest gospel in some ways. The Gospel of Mark is filled with immediacy, the importance of repenting, the importance of acting. The kingdom is here. It's time for us to act. And there's an interesting thought for your life and mine. When we think about our spirituality, do we think about the immediate need for us to make decisions, for us to make changes? Or do we sort of fall into a lackadaisical, taking it easy sort of approach to spirituality? The writer of Mark expects and asks the readers to act, to listen, to hear, and act right away. The disciples in all the Gospels are depicted as kind of dim-witted. They don't get it. They hear, but they don't hear. They see, but they don't see. Jesus keeps telling them over and over and over, and they never really quite get it. There is a section in the study this time about demon possession, and I am commonly asked, now how's this for a random topic that we just have in the lesson today? People ask me from time to time what I think about demon possession, and I like to say, well, I don't ever want it to happen to me. I know some people that think demons are in everything, that if you're discouraged, you have a spirit of discouragement, and there are places you can go and they'll pray for you to cast out spirits of discouragement. I don't think that is what Jesus was dealing with. I believe that there actually was an evil spirit that inhabited these people, and I think it happens in our world today. It's not very common. I've met a couple of people that I believed were possessed, and they are very, very frightening. It's a very unnerving situation. Some people ask me, how do you get possessed? They're worried sometimes about all sorts of interesting things, that a demon's going to come to their home and they're going to suddenly be oppressed or possessed. And what I would tell you is, just as you have to open your heart and receive Jesus and ask him in, you have to let these other evil things in as well. They don't have the power to overcome the Christ in you. And as far as the whole issue of evil, of Satan and demons, I encourage my Christian friends and those that go to our church to believe that we should spend our time trusting God and loving him and not fighting off the devil. I hear some people talk and their prayers are always resisting the devil. Well, the scripture says if we resist the devil, he'll flee from us. But we keep letting him back in by talking about him all the time. I just think if we talk about the Lord, if we give our life to him, if our heart is filled with God and his love, we don't have to worry about the devil, because God's Spirit keeps him at arm's length from us. While we're on the topic, I would suggest to you that God and the devil are not opposites. God is not the good God and Satan the evil God. God, in fact, is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-present. The devil, whatever we know of him, is a created being. He was an angel. He is not all-knowing. He is not all-powerful. He's not all-present. He can't be at your house and my house at the same time. If we believe that, we're believing magic. That would be like believing that the angel Gabriel could be everywhere in the world at the same time, and we just don't believe that. So when we understand that Satan is a created being, and not the opposite of God. I think it just helps us trust God more and let the bigness of God fill our life instead of worry about the devil and evil things. There just is a discussion in your lesson about illness and sin, and your lesson says that Jesus addressed illness and sin in John chapter 9 when he says that sin is not the cause of illness. But your lesson does indicate that in Mark chapter 2, the story of the man paralyzed, that his problem was sin. Well, he had a lot of problems. He was paralyzed. I don't think the story, in my opinion, indicates that he was paralyzed because of his sin. Jesus was just making a point to the Pharisees and the teachers there at the house that he had the power to forgive sin. And it's not that man's problem was sin. All of our problem is sin. Jesus could and would be forgiving all of our sin if we were in the room. And I don't really join that in any way to the fact that the man was on the mat and paralyzed. I love that story, by the way, because the friends bring him. And I hope you have friends that bring you to Christ, that care for you, that go the second mile, that would tear through somebody's roof if that's what it took to help you. There's a discussion in this lesson about Sabbath. I love the concept of Sabbath, not so much thinking in terms of what you do, what's your Saturday or what's your Sunday, or is it okay to drive on the Sabbath, but Sabbath has a concept of rest. It's so important that we rest in this life. We're so busy and hurried and we end up exhausted all the time. How do you find rest? When do you find rest? And how do you order your life so that you find a sense of refreshment and joy? I don't know about you. I'm assuming you're like me. When we get too busy, we're just exhausted and we miss the Sabbath. We miss the rest. And God rested on the seventh day. It is an example to us that we need rest so that we feel whole and healthy and joyful. Then back to the concept of the hidden Messiah. Why does Jesus say to people over and over again, don't tell anybody who I am? Well, do we really know? What I've always read, what I've always thought was that he didn't want to be publicized until it was time. He didn't want the time to come too soon, and he knew when the time was, and so he's just trying to keep the ultimate suffering and death that he will face at bay until it was time. It's interesting as well, and you get this picture in the lesson as well. I mentioned that the disciples didn't really get Jesus. They weren't really sure of who he was and what he was about. Peter said, "You're the Christ, the Son of the living God." Yeah, that's right. But he's also got to go to Jerusalem and suffer. I think of what happens when the women announce to the disciples that Jesus' body isn't in the tomb. They go running to the tomb. They don't know what to think. They go running to see. And I have this picture in my mind that just as the resurrection is taking place and they go there and they see that he's not there, some things start to come together in their brain, and they begin to think about some of what he taught, and they begin to understand that this was all a part of God's plan. Well, the Gospels are wonderful. Mark is a wonderful place to read. If you know somebody that's thinking about starting to read the Bible, point them to the Gospel of Mark. It's a wonderful place to read and begin a journey with Jesus. Thanks for listening to me. Have a great lesson tonight. God bless you.